Hey everybody, welcome to the 99th episode of PRIMO NUTMEG. Chrispy returns.
Hey everybody, I'm back.
And also returning is Paul. Hey Paul, how's it going?
Hey everybody, 99 and feeling fine.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are both here. This is a very special episode, 99, right before our big 100th episode.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. What's the deal with that?
Well, we're going to have a surprise guest, and we're going to reveal that. I'm not actually sure when we're going to reveal it, but we're going to have a little guessing session later, and you guys can try to figure out who the guest for episode 100 is.
Is it Matt Groening?
We're going to do this later.
All right.
Because we're also actually waiting on Jack, who is always on the show. He's this will be his 19th appearance, so 19 out of 99. It's a pretty good ratio, right?
Yeah.
But Chris, you are back. You're returning to not just PRIMO NUTMEG, but the Nutmeg State, because you've been living in Nolens for the past several months.
Yeah. I think it's been about 8 months that I've been down there.
So how has that been? Because, well, first of all, have you ever been to New Orleans before you moved down there?
Well, my mom moved down there a couple of years ago, but even before then, I hadn't been to it. No.
So you visited her a couple times?
Yeah, I visited a couple times.
That's a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
So what is it like, man? How is it living down there? Because I've been down there for vacation a couple times, but I've never actually lived there or been there for more than a couple days. So what's that environment like?
Well, it's interesting contrast to the New England in a lot of ways, both in terms of geography and in terms of the people that are there. I had a job working at a grocery store for a while, and I would spend long hours standing in one place, contemplating the differences between New England and the South, trying to sort them and categorize them in my head so as to collate them into a cogent and interesting discussion on the different characteristics of the South and New England.
Now, I think this is a very important discussion because Paul and I actually had a debate about New Orleans the last time that Paul was on.
Yes, we sure did.
That was my birthday episode, wasn't it?
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about travel for a while because, Paul, you've been to Austria, right? We were talking about Austria. And,
yeah,
I mean, you've been all over,
I made
obviously.
mention that I've been like everywhere except for New Orleans.
Yeah, exactly.
So well, it's just like one of those places.
So I was recommending that Paul go there, and he was saying, no, I don't want to go there. So do you think Paul would like New Orleans?
I think Paul would really enjoy that city based on what I've seen happen in it. I mean, to qualify this a little bit, I live outside the city about 30 minutes.
Well, yeah.
So I visit it, but I don't live like
that
in...
whole area is New Orleans. Kenner, Metairie, that's essentially all of New Orleans.
Well, we know what you're basing New Orleans off of, but what are you basing Paul off of, I guess is the question.
It's very like shenanigans. They like shenanigans down there.
Oh.
They like drinking and making loud noise and causing all sorts of mischief, like walking around and like, throwing things like beads and cabbage and stuff. It's just like a
cabbage that really plays to the Pollock in me.
Yeah,
so
They throw cabbage?
Throw me all the heads you got.
They have a St. Patrick's Day parade, and they throw like cabbage and carrots and stuff, which I thought was sounded kind of dangerous, but it's just a...
Well, do they blunt the carrots prior to throwing them?
I would assume so. I wasn't there for it, but it sounded like an interesting festival to me.
I actually didn't know that they had a St. Patrick's Day parade until the last time I was there, because apparently there's a whole Irish section of New Orleans also.
Yeah, which I thought was weird. I didn't know that was a thing. But I guess it's enough of a thing that they decided to throw a parade for it.
But that's why New Orleans is special, I think, because it really is such a melting pot more than anywhere else I've ever been. You have very strong cultural backgrounds from a variety of different sources, and it becomes something totally unique. When you say, I mean, where else in the world is like New Orleans?
Well, I mean, you could compare it to like a place like New York City, which has more of like a cosmopolitan feel in a way, but with New Orleans, there's more of like not just the mixing of people, but there's like, ethnic identities there that kind of reach back a little bit, which give it sort of a distinctive character from like a big, like sort of international city like that.
Right, and then you have like all the Mardi Gras stuff as well, like all the costumes and weird just kind of culture that brings with it.
It's sort of like a mixture of things and traditions.
Yeah, because there's different parades, right? There's like the Zulu parade, and then there's different crews and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's like a month-long thing. It's not just one day. It goes from like the beginning of January to whatever happens in February. People are really geared up for it.
It's like their claim to fame, though, really. I mean, that's kind of the one thing you associate New Orleans with, correct? Well, and jazz, I suppose, but...
Yeah, there's a little bit of that there too.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of those funerals where they have like the big jazz parades for the funerals?
No, I haven't. I haven't even heard of that.
That's like a thing too. Is like a traditional New Orleans funeral. They'll kind of dance through the streets and they'll play trumpets and have like umbrellas and stuff. It's a big show. But don't they have practice parades all throughout the year? That was my understanding. Is that the crews kind of practice for Mardi Gras throughout the summer and fall also.
Yeah, it's a big competition down there. Like we saw tons, and I only went to one of the parades during Mardi Gras, the Bacchus parade. It wasn't
That's a big one, right?
No, it wasn't. It was like the penultimate big one, not the big one.
Okay.
It took place at night after a series of other parades, and it was just like lines and lines of competing, high school acts and some college acts too from around that area, not just Louisiana, but from around the South. So they take it pretty seriously. There's a very a team mentality down in the South, which is not quite the same as it is up in the North here.
But I still distinguish New Orleans from the rest of the South, just because the culture there is so unique and diverse and whatever. It's completely. I think, and actually too, I think of Acadiana, like Southern Louisiana. That's sort of different than the rest of the South too, just because you have that subculture. But then within that, you have New Orleans, which is also unique. So
yeah, I can't really comment because I haven't traveled too extensively in the other parts of the South. But to me, it seems like there are some elements of the culture down there which kind of seep in through like the South in general, which stem from its history and its geography and that kind of thing. And there are other things which are more related to the ethnic history of the city, which kind of spread out and kind of give it its unique flavor.
So, have you been to the French Quarter? Like that's the big famous part of New Orleans where Bourbon Street is.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times. It's a cool place. It's got it's got a great sort of historical vibe to it. I think it was one of the only parts of the city that survived intact the hurricane, some 12 years ago. So it has that surrounding it too. And that's another thing too, is that they have Katrina is sort of like a uniting historical memory for people down there that really kind of bring them together in a regional way that I haven't really seen anywhere else in the country. Like this is I haven't traveled too much, but like this is a thing that sort of bonds us as a community.
Yeah, the first time I went down there in it was either 2009 or 2010. There was still, you'd go down a road and there'd be a house with a perfectly manicured lawn and it looks beautiful. And then next door there would just be like a big abandoned mansion, that was left over from the hurricane. And there was all kinds of damage you'd still see, like just I don't know, there'd be things knocked over still and like on top of roofs and whatnot. Is it still like that at all?
No, not really. I think it's pretty much most of it is cleaned up. If you were going down there like I was, 12 years after it happened, you wouldn't really notice too much of it apart from, sort of the memory of it that people have. And
so what do they do to commemorate it?
Well, it's not really that there's like a commemoration of it. It's just kind of like a thing. Almost like
like an unspoken 9/11 or something of that.
Sort of like a remember the Alamo kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Like this is like a thing that, happened to us that, brought us together. Mm. It's an aura, if you would.
So just to get back to your point, why would Paul specifically like that? It's just because of the party atmosphere, or is it something more just broadly vibrant about the city?
It's just, it is vibrant, but it's just the kind of city that's, you can just kind of like jump into it. Like there are people, the people there are like very friendly. There's a very relaxed attitude.
Well, I like that part of it. That's kind of why I'm all about Maine nowadays too. So I think from that aspect, but like the party scene, it's kind of like take it or leave it really for me nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I have to say too, I actually kind of liked going there outside of Mardi Gras because I was there at the Mardi Gras after the Saints won the Super Bowl. I remember being on Bourbon Street and like that was the heart of Mardi Gras and like the biggest Mardi Gras ever. and it was just it was too much. It was too many people. It was too crowded.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if
It
it's
was-
my
it was-
old age, but yeah, I hate crowds of people.
It was also confined too because the French Quarter is still kind of a bad area. So they just the cops tried to keep you specifically on Bourbon Street. And actually, there's a point where Bruce and I tried to like kind of walk down on the side roads, and the cops like, "Hey, get your ass back here! get back to
into the party. Yeah.
So, I mean, you were there during Mardi Gras, weren't you?
Well, I was living there during Mardi Gras. I wasn't in the city during Mardi Gras proper.
Did you avoid it?
I think I had to work that day, but I also didn't want to go out of my way to go to it. I mean, I'm sure it's like a great thing, but for me, like even the Bacchus Parade, which was pretty big, it was kind of like, for me anyway, it was a thing that you see and you go, huh, okay, well, I've seen that now. And then you're on your way, how many beads, I thought catching the beads was very fun, but how many can you have whipped at you until you're like
Over encumbered by beads.
okay, well, I'm gonna head out now. I'll see you guys later. You know how I am with parties. It's basically just like a big version of that.
Have you made friends with the locals yet?
Not really. I haven't really ventured out too much. And it's a little bit. I'm a little bit reserved. I think down there in a way that I don't gel with the.
Well, I imagine there's a lot
mentality
of
down there.
Northerners there too. Like, there's got to be a lot of people from New England or the Northeast overall.
There are some. I met one when I was working as a grocer who was from Massachusetts, and because I had to check her ID for alcohol, and I asked her how she liked living down here. She said, I've been down here for 2 years. I really like it. I like knowing the names of my neighbors and that kind of thing. And she said something. Said like cold weather, cold people. In a very, which I thought was.
It's pretty poignant.
Yeah. I don't know how true that is, though. Like, I was talking to Eric Hirsch about this, and I think that people in the Northeast are friendly. They're just, thank you. They're just kind of like in a rush or something, or like they're very like business minded.
Well, I mean, you go up to like New Hampshire, Vermont, or Maine, or like upstate New York. Like it's really just like Connecticut and Massachusetts and New York City. That's really.
But people are still friendly. Like they're kind to you and they'll help you out or whatever.
I think deep down people want to be friendly, but like you're saying, everybody's in too big of a rush nowadays.
Well, my thinking about this is that it's not that people up here in the north are unfriendly. It's just that there is more of an individualistic spirit down here, which doesn't carry over into the south as much. Like I remember when I was in high school, reading like New England authors like Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson that had that really strong sense of like self-sufficiency and originality. That's not like such a big thing down in the South, and that's where I think the reputation of the South for being like less intelligent in the eyes of Northerners comes from, because it's more about like the way I visualize it is like comparing like a classic New England town that you see in a calendar, which is like all clustered up with a church steeple, to like a plantation, which is wide open. One family will live there for generations. Kind of operating openly. And that's kind of the general spirit of those two places.
So, sorry to interrupt you. I do want to introduce Jack, though. Hey, Jack.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Jack, by the way, this is the 99th episode of PRIMO Nutmeg.
Nice.
Can you believe it?
And it's my 19th appearance.
There you go. I was just saying that.
Nines across the board. Any ad. See?
Yeah.
Think that's a coincidence? Nope.
So we were just talking about the difference between specifically New Orleans and Connecticut, but also I guess the South and the North. Jack, have you been to New Orleans before?
No, I've been to Florida and Alabama.
Yeah, you're in
Texas.
you've been to Pensacola, right?
Yeah, Dothan.
It's kind of close, but it's not really the same culture, though. I don't think.
Yeah, it doesn't have that sort of Creole spiciness to it.
I think they actually do. They do have Mardi Gras there.
Yeah,
but it's still not exactly
it's much
the same
more
thing.
subdued. It's more like a Memorial Day parade or something. That's the way I worked with a guy who was from Pascagoula, Mississippi, and that's the way he described it. It's like, yeah, we'd have carnival in town, but it was just like one small parade.
People don't want to go to it.
Well, like, the local Rotary Club does.
Yeah.
Shriners.
Well, I don't know. I guess just to summarize, Paul, I really think you should go there. I think it would be a good time.
I actually boycotted going to cities, so it's
All cities?
All cities. Yep.
It's a good policy.
I guess. I don't know. There's some good cities. I think New Orleans is a great city, and Boston's a good one.
No, well, speaking of Boston, this is what kind of, I went out for my bachelor party and we got jumped in Chinatown by a gang of Chinese people at like 11 o'clock at night or whatever. And, it's just Josh and I against like 10 guys. And that kind of just like, that was it. No more cities.
Fair enough.
Unless it's a concert that I really want to see.
Sounds like a real Vegeta and Goku situation.
No, we weren't powering up that night. It was pretty bad. It's like just take the lumps, lay down.
I don't know. I never had anything really bad happen to me in a city. I got into a big Mustang race in Memphis once. That was pretty cool. But like, I don't know. I never had like a negative experience like that. Because like before that, you were cool at cities, weren't you?
Yeah, I guess so. But it kind of made me think about all the other elements of a city also, and it's just not for me. Too crowded.
I mean, I don't really like New York. I mean, it's just
the culture. Oh, the culture. Shove it up your ass, really.
The culture of paying too much for shit.
Fucking culture, my ass. Yeah.
I got stuck in a traffic jam in the Lincoln Tunnel one time in August. It was
fun.
me and John. We were trying to get out back to Jersey, and it was like 120 degrees in there, and it just stunk like exhaust because you're like stuck in this tunnel. And I had to pee so bad. So I ended up pissing in like a Subway cup we had in the car.
Good
and
times.
I like just whipped it against the wall like as hard as I could. Like, fuck this place. I never want to come back. I fucking hate this dump.
That's probably tame for what happened in the tunnel that day.
Yeah.
Are there any cities that you can tolerate, Jack, or you just uniformly hate them all?
Well, I think Louis C.K. summed it up best when he was littering. He like threw a Snickers bar on the street in New York, and his friend's like, "Dude, you can't litter." He like looked around. He's like, "This is the biggest pile of litter in the world. What are you talking about?" Like, they're basically just garbage piles that people live on. I mean, going back to the oldest cities, right? What's a tell? It's a big mound made from just refuse that people build their cities on in Sumeria or whatever.
I don't know, Chris. How would you compare New Orleans to different cities? Like you've been to Boston a lot, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, is it just like the same difference between the North and the South, or I think every city has something that makes it unique.
Yeah, they all have different characteristics. I don't know if I could give you like a bullet point list of like interesting discrepancies.
Well, I like both of them because they're kind of open. Like you can walk around a lot. I'm good.
Yeah.
Like that the area near it's Tulane. The area near Tulane is a lot like kind of Boston Common. It has that same sort of feel, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. I'd say in Boston there are like a lot of interesting things to see, like because it's such like a big college town, and it's a big music town too. So there are a lot of people that go in and out of there, and it's the kind of place where you can see shows, like private shows at like that you wouldn't be open to the public at like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, just like on a whim. New Orleans, I haven't explored it too much, but it's more kind of like a cool city for like kind of going and being kind of crazy and causing a ruckus, but it's not like it doesn't have the intellectual attraction that maybe some of the northern cities do. I guess I might say as a generalization.
So, what I'm getting from you is that Southern people are retarded. I know you have more decorum than that, but that seems to be the real subject you want to drive home. You're like, well,
I don't know. I would say they just have a sort of a different attitude towards life. Like the ideal for a New England man is like living in it by himself, maybe with his small family, in the woods, in a cabin, self-sufficient, nobody else, we're good. And the ideal for a Southern man is sort of like being the head of like a large family who is successful in the community. Football is a really big thing down there, but in like a weird way, like people.
Oh, it's like a cult, like Roll Tide,
Well, it's weird because it's everybody is into it, but they don't like know the mechanics of it as such. Like, I don't really know much about it myself, and I was talking with some of the people down there, and I said, well. And because they thought of football first, because I was from New England, and I said, "Well, are the Saints and the Patriots in the same conference?" I didn't know. And nobody there knew. Like they didn't know what like the conferences were, and I had to ask like
Really?
4 or 5 people.
That's insane.
For
You figure because you know like who your division rivals are and all that.
Or you could potentially play in the Super Bowl if you're playing in the NFC Championship. Like,
Right.
When they play, they play. That's all we know.
yeah, it's just kind of something that kind of happens. It's very peculiar.
who that say they gonna beat them Saints?
Yeah. So something lost, something gained, I suppose.
Jack, where's your favorite place that you've ever traveled to?
I don't know. Alaska's pretty cool. Like Ketchikan area, it's pretty fucking awesome.
Is there any kind of city there at all, or is it just like?
Yeah, I mean,
Bonus.
when you fly in on a plane, obviously you land either like Anchorage or Fairbanks. So, I mean, Anchorage is a pretty big city. It's like probably half the size of Seattle, I'd say, but which is probably 250,000 people or something like that. And like the city itself was just like any city. I got accosted by some fucking Indian guy asking me for money for his Medicaid. So I was like, I don't have any money. I'll give you a cigarette. He's like, okay, it'll work.
So that was your favorite place you've ever been?
It's up there. Oh, and Alaska was really cool. Like Petaluma, where I went to school in the Coast Guard. North of that is like you get into the Muir Woods or Redwood kind of area. That's really nice. I think Paul was there, right? Pretty close to that.
Yeah, that's
Santa
like
Rosa
got to be my
area.
top 5. I kind of
Yeah.
ran that circle from like north of San Francisco.
Yeah, it's
just
a
all,
pretty
like,
awesome.
Northern California.
I mean, we were just driving out in that country, and then like Half Moon Bay, it's all the fucking cliffs, like where the birds were filmed. All the cliffs, like just dropping into the ocean and stuff. It's a pretty awesome place.
Sweet.
Yeah, I mean, all of Coastal Route 1 pretty much. Like,
Yeah.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
It's sparse.
Yeah, and like what you do find is like cool. It's kind of like has Vermont kind of feel to it. There's like sort of hamlets, like
Right.
village centers and stuff because of the geography. I'm assuming you can really only like build or like near Mill River or something like that. So that was a cool place.
Well, speaking of Vermont, do you like Vermont?
Yeah, Vermont's very nice. I mean, driving up doing the Alpine slides with Shane, that was a really cool ride.
Were you there when we were doing the bar or the brewery hopping? Were either of you
No.
guys there for that?
Uh-uh.
We were going from brewery to brewery. Went to Hooker, Harpoon, and Long Trail all within like a 6-hour period. That was pretty intense.
The longest trail ever.
Paul, you said your favorite place you've ever been is Austria, right?
I don't know. I keep like reanalyzing that every once in a while, Yeah,
That'd be pretty cool.
I suppose so. Yeah.
It's the pattern for me is anywhere with like nice green mountains.
It's
Yeah.
the same thing that Jack was taught. It's all just like rolling hills, and they just have these little bergs that are, like 10 or 15 miles apart, kind of. So it's all just very sparse country, and then you go into like this little town that has like one store, and it's neat. It's just, and they just like live very healthy out there. All the food, there's no like processed crap and garbage.
That's crazy that
and,
hasn't infiltrated there yet. You'd figured,
like
Mountain stronghold.
the milk spoils in 3 days out there. It's just different. Same but different, as they would say out there.
So, Chrispy, I have to ask you now. You've been to New Orleans and you spent a summer in Mexico, and you went to Europe too, right?
Yeah, I was just there in March again too.
Really? I didn't
Yeah.
know about that. Where'd you go this time?
Spain.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I was in Catalonia.
Was that with your band again?
No, it was just like a.
He was working at a
related group.
Syndicalist button factory.
No, it was with a related group who was doing a project there, and they invited me to go along. So I decided, hey, that sounds like a fun idea.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Did you have a good time?
Well, it was an adventure.
It was more arduous than fun, but it was worth it.
Well, it was character building,
How so?
He probably made him like stand under waterfalls playing guitar and stuff.
No. I
Fetch
just
water
got
from
I
the
just got
well.
a little bit lost along the way, but I made it out alive. So.
Like separated from everyone else?
Well, I just went by myself, so I got in a country where my fluency with the language is only like 25%, maybe. And
So
that's-
like from the airport on, it was just kind of
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm imagining Brody and Cairo from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Any luck he's got the Grail already, or Last Crusade? Does anyone here speak ancient Greek?
Well, you spent a summer in Mexico, right? So you've been in that kind of atmosphere where you have to try to speak Spanish to people.
Well, usually there was somebody else in the group that like knew Spanish enough where they could just cover for me if I wasn't up to snuff. But in this situation, I was just kind of on my lonesome, so I had to navigate the subways and the train station, and I wound up in where we were staying is actually in the countryside outside of the city, Barcelona. So out there, they don't speak Spanish as a second language; they speak Catalan.
Yeah, Catalan.
Is that anything like romantic languages at all, or is it just totally different?
It's a Romance language, but you don't know one by knowing the other. Kind of like the way you would know Italian if you knew Spanish. Or
I
something
guess
weird.
they're still like the same roots, though. So, like for me,
Like
like
Mandarin and Chinese or something like that.
like when I'm like my girlfriend's Portuguese, or I'm sorry, she's Brazilian. She speaks Portuguese.
Yeah.
So like when she's speaking Portuguese and I don't know the word, like I'll just use like a word with like that Latin base to try to get it across or whatever.
Yeah, that's true, but you still have to. It's hard to improvise on the fly.
Asking for directions like in a subway station or something like.
Well, I mean, especially if you need like detailed directions, and you have to explain what you're doing here. You know where you're trying to go and what your specific problem is. If it's something beyond like, oh, where's the train? You know, oh, I need to take the train, but not the metro, which is under the city. I'm actually going outside of the city, and I need to be there by whenever, but I don't have this piece of information or what have you.
It's crazy how they rely on trains so much more there too. Like in Japan, I was in a car like 2 times, I think. It's like anywhere that you want to go, you have to use public transportation.
Yeah, I mean, if I were living in the city, that would be pretty great actually, because you can just kind of walk everywhere if you have that kind of support. Driving into it, of course, is a nightmare, but it would be fun just to like, just be a pedestrian in the city is pretty cool.
So how long were you in Spain for?
About 6 or 7 days.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a full week. And you just were in Barcelona, or you got kind of that whole province or whatever?
Well, I was actually in a really small town called Borgoña. There was like a terraced community actually, which is out like in sort of the mountains. So it was really cool, kind of running a train through that area and like seeing the pueblos they kind of have built into the cities.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Well, I would say my favorite place I've ever been was Kyoto, even though it is a city. I actually had a really good time though, because we were like riding bikes through the city, and it's so old. It's like 1,000 years old. So it's these really narrow alleyways, and like every block there's some ancient temple.
Is it all cobbled or is it just straight there? Yeah.
Yeah, and like again, there's just so many fucking temples everywhere. Like there's a couple I really like, Jinkukuji and Kinkukuji, which is the Golden Palace and the Silver Palace. And then I don't know, it was a really unique place. I've never really been anywhere like that. And actually, there was a bit of country too, though, because they had like hillsides with like these. It was like these religious paths where they'd have like these kind of doorways. And you'd go up this whole mountain. I don't know what they're called. There's some Japanese term for it, but it's just like a
like
wooden door
Shinto
frame.
portals, yeah.
There's actually one on the top of Mount Fuji. Once you get to the top, you walk through one of those. But there's like in Kyoto, there's this whole big area where it's like forest and it's all uphill. It's like a little mountain there too, and the whole way you're like walking through those things. So that's
pretty fun. That's neat.
It's bizarre.
One more bead on your little Buddhist rosary there.
But
is it the kind of place that you would go to and just drive around, like rent a car or something and just go?
I wouldn't really take a car. I'd do it by foot or bike or use a train. The trains in Japan are great. I actually really like them a lot. I dislike public transportation in the U.S. And actually, after a summer of being in Japan, I had to ride the Amtrak home from like Cleveland.
Going back into the fucking Stone Age.
Well, my
Why is
car
this train going 60 right now?
my car burst into flames in outside Cleveland, so I had to like get on a train at 4:00 in the morning, an Amtrak, and then go from fucking Cleveland to Springfield, Massachusetts, which is just like a fucking Rust Belt tour.
Yeah.
So it was a big contrast.
Versus the gleaming skyscrapers that can transform to defend their respective cities to these fucking rusted out
Actually,
hulks.
I went to a couple of museums when I was there, and there was one thing where they were talking about putting buildings on these wheels that like roll underground. So like when there's an earthquake, like they just kind of roll
Float
around.
on the top.
Yeah, so it's
Cool.
pretty intelligent. I don't know the practicality of having a whole fucking building on wheels, but
Well, I mean, they have like suspension systems, you know, spring based.
I mean, sure it's possible.
Well, you know, it's weird too in Europe and Asia. There's not really like suburbs in the American sense either. So
No, they were surprised when I said that I was from a town of 15,000 people. The person in the car with me said, "So you're a friend with Bear and Fox?"
living like an Ewok over
Yeah.
there in Colchester.
Just because like the small towns there are like 100,000 people, you know.
And they're like all, like you said, they're like clustered at the foot of a mountain. So like everyone's living on top of each other, like in this little nucleus. And then it's like rice fields. Like it goes from like total density to just agriculture or like nothing.
Yeah, pretty much immediately, actually.
Yeah, like once you cross that bridge and it's like boom. It's just totally different than, you know, the way we live or need to transport ourselves, you know.
It's the very opposite of Kenner, Louisiana, which is just like if you're flying into it, where the airport is, it's sprawling, just square. So it's like it's all the same. It's very cowed down there. If New England is a rat race, then the South is a big cow pasture. It's all just like if you're walking around and it's like a Flintstones cartoon, it's just like repeating. Oh, there's a McDonald's again. Oh, there's a Chick-fil-A again.
Yeah, it's true. And the roads are all basically straight. Like I'm sure New Orleans is a little more, you know, older and it's on sort of its own little spit of land. So it's
The French Quarter is just a total grid.
okay, but like even
The rest of it isn't.
I mean, like Arizona's the exact same way.
yeah,
Just every,
like
couple
I'm
of
thinking like
miles.
more Dothan. It's just like you got your main road, and then it just goes. And then
Yep.
like oh, you're running into there's a Whataburger. Oh, and there's like another 10 miles of houses, and then like oh, there's a Circle K. Oh, and there's another Whataburger. Like you're just
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. You just feel like trapped in this big sprawl.
Well, the highway is actually like that because when you're driving through like town after town in Tennessee, it's always like you'll see a church, a gas station, and a Waffle House.
Waffle House,
And
yeah.
just every single town is
Oh,
that
yeah.
over and
Yeah,
over
they
again.
impregnate the South.
Maybe like a fireworks factory. They're pretty, or place where they sell them. They're pretty big
Yeah.
down there too.
Joker Joe's Waffle House.
Yeah.
Like driving down 95. And
So-
Texas was very much the same way too. Just like
Mm.
you could just burn on the highway, go like fucking 90 miles an hour, you know, and just like not really see anything.
Mm.
People's like houses.
Yeah, Texas is really weird. I was going from like Houston to Galveston, which is probably only like 100 miles or something like that, but there was just nothing on the way
Yeah.
at all.
I
Kudzu.
I kind of just sped through Texas when I went to Dallas and turned around and came right back because I was considering moving down there. I was going to like take a look at it, and it was just I went to Arlington, which is between Dallas and Fort Worth, and it's just a fucking shithole. Like that's where the first Six Flags is. That's where Dallas Stadium or Cowboy Stadium and the Texas Rangers field are. So like they have those things, but like besides that, it's just fucking like the slums of.
First Six Flags is in San Antonio, right?
Is it?
Six Flags over San Antonio, yeah.
Well, there's a big one there.
I did a big job there or whatever, so that's the only reason that I know.
You probably you've been to a lot of those, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of water parks.
What's the biggest one that you've done?
Probably that one. I was out there for like a month and a half. I had these big old cargo nets. They were like 30 feet by 30 feet. Only need to be lashed into place, but they were suspended like 20 feet above ground. So you can only
That's
imagine the
crazy.
rigging on that shit without a crane, you know, 1,000-pound nets.
How do they test those things out? Did like people like have to jump into them? Because that sounds like that would be a fucking fun job.
They push retired circus elephants onto them.
We have drop testing, but all of our lashing capability is kind of just on us to make it good. You know, you don't really want somebody dying off of something that you did, so better make sure the shit's tight and it's gonna hold. You know.
Yep. I don't know. I think it might be fun. Like once I don't know if you're sure that it works, or whatever. Just like personally test it, like jump onto it.
But you wouldn't
Well,
be
we-
the test guy if you knew it worked.
Well, we
Yeah.
do anyways because kids have to crawl, and I'm like half the time we're like standing in the things while we're like affixing them.
That's true.
Because there's no other option, you know. But
Well, Chris, let me ask you this: is there anything that you missed about Connecticut and wanted to come back up here for?
Well, I mean, just a lot of the stuff that's kind of the flip side of the good stuff. That's about the South. Like, you know, people are very. I think people are like genuinely friendlier down there. I hear some Southerners complain about the manners of Northern people,
Yeah.
which I think
They say
some
that in the
cases are-
Midwest too.
Yeah, but I think in a lot of cases though it is like very like they're more patient with people.
Mhm.
Like if you're working in a store in New England, like you get lots of people who come up to you after someone who's like slow or pokey and say, "Man, what an asshole that guy was, huh?" That happened to me maybe like once or twice the whole time I was working in the South. But you get a lot of people who like if there's an elderly person, especially, they're very patient and understanding with them. They're not hurrying them. They're not hurrying anybody along. You see a lot of like if they're at the register and somebody in front of them has like a small person say, "Oh, I'll pay for that for you," and that kind of generosity. There's a lot more courtesy. Some of it, which is a bit weird, like they use honorifics down there in a way because they would call you Mr. Steve rather than Steve, which was kind of I could never really adapt to it, and I think that's kind of one of the things that sort of set me back socially when I was working down there. But the flip side of that is that it feels like you're on a big sports team. Like everything is kind of like I was saying before about the suburbs that were all the same. Sports are big down there and like a not so much as like a hobby that you like follow, but as sort of like almost like a psychological projection. So it feels very tightly knit sometimes. So that if you don't fit in as easily, you can feel sort of more ostracized more quickly than you would if you were just like some weirdo living in.
Well, you didn't get lynched. So
Yeah, well,
fit in.
that's true.
But on that politeness thing, isn't there kind of passive aggressiveness also? Like there's that infamous "bless your heart" they say, I guess in Texas. Like, are there things like that where people are just overly nice even though they're really pissed off?
I'm sure there is. I haven't. That was my thought about it when I first moved down there, but it's really not. That's what the people are really like.
Everyone's
they're
being really sarcastic right now.
Well, that
well,
was
because that's what you figure when you're from up here. Like, oh, they're
Yeah.
just like putting on a show or whatever.
Oh, after you.
Yeah, but they are really like
There
it
you
because
go.
respect is like a kind of currency down there. And there are like just certain things that you do, certain formalities and ways of greeting people that people are amenable to, and that if you don't do it, as small as they are, it can come back to haunt you. And that's sort of one of the things that is like a little bit like down there. It would make sense to do something because it was something that would be that the community would like to do, even if there wasn't an obvious like profit behind it. Whereas up in New England, there's more of a show me the money attitude by comparison. But at the same time, it's like you can't be as weird about it down there as you could be if you wanted to do something up here and get attention for it. And also, naturally, I think the land up here is like a lot more beautiful. Like down
Yep,
there, it's
it
all
is
flat
pretty.
and swampy and.
That's one of the reasons I really wanted to come back here when I
Generally
was
gross.
in Indiana. Was just I missed the topography here and just being able to go for a hike in the woods and go by a river.
Yeah, like you
that
can,
doesn't
here you can
exist
just like
other
walk like
places.
5-10 minutes and just be in the woods or something. Up
Yeah.
there, it's like just like like sprawl. It can be very depressing.
Like
Sometimes.
cypress wood.
Well, something I didn't like about Indiana either is that if I didn't like the city I was in, it took me forever to go somewhere else. Is New Orleans not really like that though? I mean, there's other stuff pretty close, right? Biloxi's not that far, or like Baton Rouge. You said you haven't been to any of those other cities,
No, I haven't ventured out too far.
but you're thinking you're going to relocate somewhere else, right?
Yeah, it's kind of looking that way. But
Where's
it's not really my decision though, because I'm living there with my mom right now, and she is the one that wants to move. So it's kind
Were you thinking about moving?
of it's looking like it's going to be like maybe in the Carolinas somewhere.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard because I'm trying to steer her away from doing something that's going to make her really unhappy. Because she wants to be near family, but she also doesn't want to deal with any snow. But you can't really.
Well, it's actually funny
those
because
things work
my
together.
family has been
There's
moving.
always Cornwall, England.
Two of my aunts moved
Well,
to
I don't know,
North
family.
Carolina. It seems like a popular spot. I think a lot of people are, especially from the Northeast.
Yeah, that's
and-
the big exodus around
Yeah.
here is the Carolinas. I've heard most
Yeah.
people say.
wonder how they feel about that. The North Carolinians, just all these fucking Northeasterners. moving in.
Outer Banks is the biggest tourist trap ever, so I'm sure they're happy about it. Get a little more money in their pockets.
Yeah, but again, the cultures are distinct. So I mean, you have all these fucking sarcastic assholes show up who are in a rush.
Hey, it worked out for Florida, right?
Yeah, that's true.
The East Coast of Florida is like
Yeah.
blue now. It's basically just like New York Junior.
We should mention too. Well, no, Bruce has never been on the show. I wanted to give a shout out that he just moved to Key West, but
Well, he did, and he got robbed already, so he's out of money.
He lost a really tight roll too. I was like, how much?
wow.
Jeez.
Well, again, there's no reason to talk about that since Bruce has never been on the show. So,
We'll talk about that later.
He's been talked about though many times on the show.
He's
well,
infamous.
didn't you say that Krusty was that way for you for a while? Like you'd always hear these stories about Krusty, but you never
I never
actually
saw
met
him.
the
He had
guy.
a sort of a claw about him that really fell for me, fell to pieces when I first met him. It was kind of like,
Oh, it's just like a red-haired Shane.
yeah, just a guy.
Wait, that's all?
So again, just last thing on living down.
I mean,
there.
no, but before we go, no offense to Krusty if he's listening to this, by the way. I'm
Krusty
sure you're
doesn't
great.
listen to
We
this.
haven't really
Krusty doesn't
talked
have
much,
time to
but I'm
listen
sure
to
you're
this.
Don't
great.
be. You'll be out of state before he gets pissed off.
What? Actually, he listened to episode 80 with Shane, my in-depth interview with Shane.
Oh, that was a good one.
Which I couldn't
Burning
recommend enough.
cylinders of hell.
But Chris, last question on
I don't know.
What?
yeah, that was like the line of that night was a piece of dog shit on the burning cylinders of hell. Apparently,
That pretty much sums up Connecticut quite nicely, really, if you want to
Yeah.
give a motto.
but Chris, living down there, has anyone pointed out something that you've done? Have you been just like going about your business and all of a sudden somebody's like kind of shocked by what you say or do or needs to comment on it?
Well, I mean, in general, it's a place where if you like make a joke without a punchline or if you say something without laughing, which I tend to do a lot, people will kind of like stop for a second and kind of ponder what you say, and you have to be careful
Wait, are
because
you
you'll make
joking,
enemies that
or-
way. Yeah, because they're
That bow is an odd duck.
yeah they're weary about that kind of thing or leery about it.
Well, he might be a carpetbagger. Who knows?
You haven't said wicked, have you?
No, I haven't. I have not.
That's something I say a lot and people commented on a lot. Wicked and packy. Like I'd say I need to make a packy run. Everybody just stare at me. They know what the fuck I
You
meant.
see, I usually have little
hella gay.
reason to talk about the package store, so I'm kind of good on that.
True. Plus, they sell booze everywhere there. Can't you walk around with alcohol in New Orleans? I believe you can.
I don't know
Just
about
drive
that, but
up
they-
and get a strawberry daiquiri.
Yeah, you can just they have drive-through daiquiri.
Really? You
Was-
can get
yeah.
booze in your car?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
You
amazing.
can buy you can buy alcohol and.
But you're not
like,
allowed to drink it? Is that the
No.
rule?
I don't know. You
You
just,
can
it's,
like
it's,
give
it's,
it to a passenger.
it's an honor system.
Right.
That's pretty crazy.
I was holding it for my.
Your
passenger.
Honor, I don't know what happened.
You know, that's-
and got a daiquiri.
That's
Yard
one
a
of the
pina colada later.
main legal things I think people notice from state to state is the difference is in like where you can buy alcohol, when it's for sale. Like when I moved to Indiana, I was surprised that they sell liquor until like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, and then start up again at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So it's like a very narrow window where you can't buy alcohol.
Pretty much everywhere except for Connecticut.
And then
I
you can
mean,
also buy like hard liquor at fucking pharmacies, and they sell beer at gas stations. and
pretty
stuff,
much
too, so-
everywhere except for Connecticut.
Yeah.
No blue laws either.
Well, no, they had the Sunday thing. It's weird because Connecticut abolished the no sales on Sundays. Then I moved out there, and it was back to that again. But it didn't matter, I guess, when you can get at 2 o'clock in the morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning. But well, I think we should maybe take a break, and we'll be back in a minute. So here's some music. Chris,
Play your guitar.
Jack was just telling you you should move to Spain.
No.
Yeah. Could probably hook up with the circle, right?
Well, I guess I could theoretically do that. I don't really have much of a vision of what I would do when I got there. Maybe. I
Yeah,
don't
but
know.
didn't you like it there?
Yeah, that was a cool place.
I don't know. You should go back if you liked it. How did Spain differ from? You're in the Netherlands, right?
Mhm.
How are they different?
So, well, it's very more. It's more. We were talking a little bit earlier about how places have like some places have like ethnic identities, and Spain is very much a place like that too. Like Catalonia, for instance, has
Yeah.
a strong independence movement going on.
Right.
And when you're in that area, you don't see Spanish flags; you see Catalonian flags.
Did you see any public demonstrations, like protests or rallies or anything?
No, although I did when I was in the Netherlands. There was a guy climbing like a flagpole with a knife in his mouth or something, like waving around. I don't know what they
Really?
were protesting that day, but they had like a big bus blasting some kind of rock. It was actually quite good rock music while that guy was. There was some kind of demonstration going on. But that area is like, it's kind of weird. It's like there's a vibe like we've figured everything out. It's has a very clockwork kind of feel to it, whereas Barcelona was not really like that.
So which one did you like better?
Well,
The clockwork.
I don't know, because I had very different experiences going to them, because the Netherlands was very smooth and Barcelona was...
And everybody speaks perfect English, I bet.
Yeah, Amsterdam is a very English-friendly town.
Yeah.
Barcelona, not so much. I was talking to... trying to talk to like officers and stuff, and they like it was like 50-50 chance they spoke English. Most of the time though it was un poquito, which means you're shit out of luck. And the people at like the information desks only spoke Spanish too, so you had to. Actually, I actually didn't make the train I was supposed to take the first night I was there because I was running around, and the directions I had told me to go to the Plaza Catalonia and take the train to Borgoña. But when I got there was no train station. There was only the metro. And I kept on asking people, and I couldn't really, sort of draw out the dilemma that I had in Spanish. And they just said, over there. And finally, after like an hour or so, I found a woman who like I could explain what was going on, but she didn't know where Borgoña was. She thought I was going to France or something. I was like, no, it's like
Bourgeon.
75 kilometers outside the city. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, what you need to do is take the metro to the central station, and that's where the train station is. Gotcha. So I got there like just in the nick of time, but like the city I was looking for wasn't there. And I thought the line was correct. It was like places it was going to in the time, but I wasn't sure because it had already been kind of a weird, hectic day to begin with, and I wasn't sure what to do, and so I didn't have time to decide. So I said, I'm just gonna sleep here and try to contact my friends. I had also lost Wi-Fi by that time too, so my phone was basically like a clock. So, and it's a good thing I didn't take the train that night because the next day when I took it to Catalonia, or not Borgoña, when my stop came up, it was one of the last ones on the line, and there was like me and like a 13-year-old kid on the train or something. So, came up and I got my bags and I stood in front of the door. All right, here we go. And I stood there, ready. All this traveling, and all of a sudden the train started to move again. I was like, wait, no, stop! Trying to shout to somebody.
Alto.
Whatever it is in Catalan. But the doors for some stops didn't open automatically. And at the next stop, the kid who was on there just hit a little button that said Abre, and the thing popped open. And I followed him out and waited 90 minutes for the next train to go back. But reflected that it was a good thing that I hadn't gone to Borgoña the night before, because if I had done that and it was the last line of the night, I would have just been kind of stuck out.
I'm sure you would
stayed
have
on the
figured it
train
out.
and gone back into Barcelona.
You would have figured it out, I think,
Well, maybe.
eventually.
It was quite an interesting trip because I was having all this trouble trying to get to this place, and meanwhile, there was oddly enough, with all the hustling, there was enough waiting time to read an entire book.
What book did you read?
And the book I was reading was Voyage to Arcturus by David Lindsay, which is about a guy who travels to a different galaxy.
It's pretty cool.
On a quest for like the meaning of life or something, where he travels through these lands which represent different philosophical ideas or states of mind. He gets like new organs and stuff, and it was just kind of like a weird parallel, like getting lost and not knowing what's going to happen to me, and having this sort of other.
It's pretty
thing I'm
awesome.
reading.
Sounds like a pretty cool book.
Yeah.
What were some of the worlds that you went through? Do you remember?
Well, the first place he goes to is they take this sort of crystal spaceship from a tower into, and he wakes up and he's by himself, and he's in like this this sort of sprawling desert that's like has like burgundy sand or something, and he has like a tentacle on his chest, and he has like a new like ear on his forehead, and they like use it.
That's pretty fucking trippy, man.
Yeah, they like use it to greet each other, but they don't have. There's no like carnal attraction at all. It's just like, sort of an appreciation for the aesthetic aspect of the world, and they worship a god who I forget what they call him. He sort of changes form as the book goes on, but he's like the crystal from which the world spreads out, and they take him to the next area, and it's like he meets this woman there who has like a third eye, and she burns his little tentacle off, and he gets like an arm instead, and he's embarking on like more of a predatory, egoistic kind of world. And there are a lot of places he goes through, and there was a lot of information packed into like a short amount of time, so I don't remember it all. But it was
It sounds pretty interesting. It sounds
Yeah.
bizarre. It almost sounds like a myth or something, like these strange kind of stories.
There's nothing like a little platonic sci-fi to make your Spanish comedy of errors just fly right by.
well, it was an experience. I'm glad I did it and got a little bit lost. And
I think everybody gets a little bit lost in foreign travel, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I myself could say I'm all way like, where the hell am I going? And it just, it works out. You figure it out.
I got lost trying to go to a wrestling show in Japan. I went like to the totally wrong train stop and was just walking around, and then I was trying to speak with the cops to have them show me where to go. I had to pull up the picture of the event on my phone. That's what I did to communicate a lot, was just like pointing to things or drawing things. Like it's I don't know. It seemed like it was a hassle, but it's doable, even if you speak no Japanese or none of whatever the language is per se. I mean, didn't you find yourself just doing that a lot, just like kind of gesturing and showing what you meant?
well, yeah, I had to some extent. It's really a lot of the communication problems with like the really kind of like the detailed stuff, like explaining your particular problem that was just like sort of beyond getting from point A to point B. There was a guy when my phone was off. I couldn't get any Wi-Fi, so my plan was. This is also a silent retreat, by the way. So my other problem was that I could call the house on somebody else's phone, but they're not going to pick up for like an unknown number after the silence has already begun. So I have to wait until like an hour after I said I'm going to be there. And
Nobody can talk to each other. You guys are in a different country. You're not allowed to communicate with each other.
Well, it's not like. It's just like a general practice that everyone does. Like there were people there I hadn't met before.
That makes things difficult, doesn't it? If you're trying to.
Well, it
things
wasn't
go
the
wrong.
point. It actually wasn't that hard at the house. Like we got along pretty well, not saying anything for 3 days. And it was weird too because there were people there I hadn't met before, and I didn't know what country they were from because
Crafty stuff.
they were like there was this one lady there that we didn't talk the whole time, and finally when I spoke to her, she was like Russian or something. I was like, oh, that's.
Were there robes at this one?
Are there robes? No. Unfortunately not. But
Chris, like,
Yeah.
if there's like an emergency or something,
well, I mean, obviously you got to use your head.
Is there a safe word or something like that? That essentially. No, I mean, all joking aside.
Fripp.
Necessary talking is the general principle.
Yeah.
fair enough.
And then the way back was just like the hell also, but it was like in the opposite way because I had an 11-hour layover in Lisbon, but it was from 10 p.m. to 11 a.m. so I couldn't really like do anything. So I had to sleep in the airport, and all the chairs in the airport have arms in them, so you kind of have to like.
Yeah, you can't lay out.
No, you have to
won't
like
let you lay out.
sleep on the floor,
Floor
like trying to
sleeping.
wedge yourself under them. And I didn't sleep at all, so I just went to the McDonald's and I just read my book in the lobby by myself. And
It happened to me in Nagoya. I just there was the thing that kept me from sleeping was that everything in Japan talks or plays music or something. So there was like a one of those Jetson walkway things, but like where I was trying to sleep and it was talking to the people like "Samimasen," like, you know, watch your step or whatever. But that kept me up all night,
oh wow,
which made it worse when I think it was the next day I tried driving back to Connecticut and my car burst into flames and I needed to get on the Amtrak.
that's a
It was
bummer.
like, yeah, it's like fucking planes, trains, and automobiles. It was not a fun couple of days.
Yeah, I boneheadedly, one time I was going from New Jersey to Connecticut. Seems like a pretty simple travel experience, but I tried the trains, planes, and automobiles route. So I think I took a plane to Philadelphia and then took a train from Philadelphia to Atlantic City and then took a bus from Atlantic City to Wildwood. And it was all going pretty smooth, but I had to buy a train ticket to Atlantic City from Philadelphia and was like $3, and all I had was a 20 on me, and there was a kiosk, so I put it in the machine, and instead of giving me like paper money back, it spit out 17 fucking Sacagawea dollars.
Awesome.
So I'm trying to like keep these things from like falling out of my pocket because it's like a lot of money worth of dollar coins, and when I got to Atlantic City, I didn't realize you're supposed to like wait in the back, like where the buses are to catch your bus. So I was just sitting out front, and I missed my bus because like I was just waiting around, sitting around. And there were some crazy people at that fucking bus stop in Atlantic City. Holy shit! It was like the craziest people I'd ever seen in my life.
Were
Like
they all like drunk and shit?
yeah, there was this one lady who had like a mustache, and she seemed kind of liquored up, and these like Bible beaters came out, black folk, and was like talking about how Jesus was black and like Ethiopian Jesus, yada yada yada, and like so they start talking and engaging with this lady, and this lady starts fucking screaming at him, just like you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, you know. And like there was this dude who was wearing like tuxedo pants and an undershirt, like a white shirt, and no shoes, no socks. And he was holding 3 packs of Marlboro Reds and just like staring out into space. And he like was kind of just like wandering around. He looked so confused and lost. I'm like, man, what is that guy's story? Like, who the fuck knows? Crazy place.
Well, it's like Little Vegas, essentially, you know, just more condensed
And like
scummier.
scummy, yeah. 1 in 5 prostitutes I heard on the news in Wildwood in Atlantic City has HIV or AIDS.
I like them odds.
So
So you actually reminded me of something. I was just at Comic-Con a couple weekends ago, and there was people going around while we're all waiting in line to get into Comic-Con. There was these people handing out these cards, and it was for this website, ChristIsAWoman.com.
nice.
And I'm gathering that this chick here, she's saying that she's Christ or something.
Christ is a great hairdo.
Yeah, maybe I can go into this a little bit. I don't
Well,
know.
remember that weird pamphlet we got at the Trump rally too?
Oh yeah, what was that? There was some like guy
Some
hanging out with
dude-
Mr. T, right?
Yeah, yeah. He was like a music producer or something like that, like big names in Nashville at some point in his life. Or
I might actually still have pictures of
I
that
don't know
one.
what the fuck happened to that. What that was all about.
Christ is a middle-aged soccer mom.
Pretty
His
much.
Purple sports blazer.
That was a weird night, wasn't it, Jack? Going to the that Trump rally.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Did you have a good time? Or
Yeah,
was it
for sure. It was Gonzo. You know, I liked it.
I could have sworn I took.
And who would have thunk that he'd actually win by that at that point? You know, so it's just like funny.
I thought I took.
I didn't think I'd
picture.
actually see the future president. Amazing.
That was like
Yeah.
Christmas for me when I woke up that morning.
Well, when me, Rob, and Steve were out there, we were just like, "Oh my god, he fucking won! Can you
We
fucking
were at a
believe
fucking
it?"
Democratic rally. This is all recorded, by the way. Primo Nutmeg 51 for anybody who wants to look that. But we were at a fucking we were at a Democratic rally. Like I was like interviewing Chris Murphy and who's the other one?
Dick Blumenthal.
Yeah, Richard Blumenthal.
Chef
and-
and Succotash.
I just remember.
And then
we
all of
had
a sudden, like the whole party just slowly like vanished. and
And we didn't get to actually see the shit hit the fan because somebody had to throw a highball glass off of the parking garage.
we didn't need to leave. Nobody noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I watched this YouTube video about this whole like College of Hillary supporters or whatever, you know, and like after they announced it, they, you know, it all went from this huge clamor to everybody just shutting up and starting to cry, essentially, you know.
Yeah, we were like right when people started getting quiet,
Yeah.
not quite crying yet, but just like, oh fuck, he keeps winning a lot of states. Like the West Coast better work out pretty good for him. And
It was like the happiest moment of my life, knowing that so many people were going to be so sad and upset and butthurt over something that doesn't even really like matter
make a
in the first
difference
place or make
whatsoever.
a difference. Could you believe that he won? It's like, so
Chris,
my life is over.
cry about it. Yeah, I heard one girl, she called 911 that she was going to commit suicide. That was another big thing too.
Because
are
Hillary
crazy.
would have been so much fucking better in some way.
Chris, that's something that we didn't really talk about is the political aspect of the North versus the South. So just going back and forth, do you notice anything like, I mean, people say the country is more divided now than ever.
But it's probably not polite for them to talk about that, right? Is that one of those
Come on, there's
things?
got to be fucking Trump signs. At least, like, when you get the suburbs and shit, you must see
your
them.
Yeah, I mean,
to
he's
yourself.
he's very popular down there. I haven't had really any political intercourse with people, but it's a red state, so
Well, New Orleans probably is different too, right?
yeah, the urban part of the area is.
What's left of them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the whole political divide in this country, it's really more city versus country than North versus South or anything like
Yeah.
that, I think. It's just like the red states have more country, right? Like Connecticut, where like this state flipped from Democrat to Trump in this past election, and I don't
Did
know.
they? Did they go
It's
to
somewhat
Connecticut?
I don't remember that.
No, it didn't. It went to Clinton.
No, this town.
Oh.
Sorry, I misspoke. This town, and like actually all of Eastern Connecticut,
No, yeah.
the whole half.
Yeah, except
like
the cities.
It's like the rural half of the state. It went. That's why I'm saying like it's really like country versus city more than anything. I think.
That might be true.
I think that's kind of new. And I think a lot of the diaspora from the Northeast to those city centers, like, say, Asheville in North Carolina or, like, Austin in Texas.
Well, yeah, because they're turning blue, right? Like
Yeah.
Virginia and North Carolina, they're becoming Democratic states now.
Right.
I think even Georgia, they were saying just because of.
Well, there's that city council race or local state Congress congressional race or something. That's, like, the most expensive in history now. And it's like neck and neck between a really, really progressive Democrat and just like a Republican.
Well, the thing that they don't get is that a lot of those counties that Trump won, like in Michigan and Wisconsin specifically, but also here in Connecticut, those were areas that went almost entirely to Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary.
Right.
So it's like just this whole sentiment of outrage, so it's people, Hillary was the establishment. So there was a big support for Bernie Sanders, I think, just to rebel against Hillary. And then people voted for Trump for the same reasons. They didn't want to vote for that shit again.
Right.
I mean, even if they ended up getting it again, because
Well, I mean, that was the whole reason why I liked him. I think he talked in a way I could understand, being a Northeast asshole myself, and he at least promised that he was going to kind of like shake things up, just drain the swamp sort of stuff. So I had hoped for that. It didn't really pan out, but
no, not really.
It's like President Camacho from
yeah, which and it was funny
Idiocracy.
too.
It was
Like,
hilarious. Yeah, like,
we get
that'd
the
be
president
awesome.
we deserve, so we get this fucking reality TV star / phony billionaire. Here you go. Perfect for America, the reality TV star / phony billionaire of the world.
Well, it's a circus anyway, so who were like,
Yeah.
might as well have the biggest
The best
clown.
ringleader going.
Yeah.
Well, we're running out of time, unfortunately, because at 9 o'clock I have to record the 100th episode of this show, and we're gonna have a special mystery guest that we're gonna be talking about at some point. But I kind of wanted to get you guys to guess who this special guest is for the 100th show.
Can we ask some questions to get clues?
Sure, why not?
Is it a phone interview?
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyone with a telephone?
Do they reside in this state?
No. This person is in California. That's why it's at 9 o'clock, because it's 6 p.m. for them.
A political figure or entertainment?
Entertainment.
Is it a Power Ranger?
No.
So funny. Crispy made mention of that earlier.
You gotta guess something, Chris. Or guess a person.
Is it an alumnus of the class of 2004?
No. But I wish. There's some people I still want to have on.
Oh yeah, Sean Lukaszowicz. That would have been a good guess.
Drew Taylor I'd like to have on. Chris Zuccaro. Mark Janiak.
Well, it'd be cool to have Sean Lukaszowicz, Drew Taylor, and maybe Brian Trowbridge have the Tavern Lane crew back
Yeah,
together.
that'd be good.
That'd be pretty good, actually. I
Good
think they're
pictures
also. I
of
think
their
they're
chats.
for the most part still around. I know Brian Trowbridge is still around.
Yeah, and Drew is too.
No, Drew moved
Sean's-
to Pennsylvania, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Last I know.
Philly, yo.
I think. I'm not really sure. Do you have any guesses, Chris?
What are the odds I would know who the person is?
You would know who the person is.
Is it a wrestler?
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Have they wrestled in the past 5 years?
No.
10 years.
10 years. I don't think so.
Scott Hall.
No, I wish. You know, actually, at Comic Con, just as a.
Well, don't say you wish because you're going to be talking.
Are they
about
American
person
or
that was-
Canadian?
I'm just saying, at Comic Con, I thought no, they're.
Valid question.
Nuh-uh.
He's American.
You got the
Okay.
Nature Boy?
No.
Oh.
But at Comic Con,
lives in Minnesota.
Scott Hall was supposed to be there, and there was a bunch of people that were upset and wished that Scott Hall had been at Comic Con. And actually, there was this guy that came up to me because I was wearing an NWO shirt.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, man, can you believe he canceled? It fucking sucks." And he opened his fucking bag. He's like, "Well, do you want these?" And he had made cookies with chocolate frosting with little NWO things on them.
That's pretty awesome.
Wanted me to eat them with him. Like, yeah, I'm okay. So he actually ended up giving them to Ric Flair.
Woo! I like homemade goods from my fans.
These are loaded with cocaine.
So I don't know. I think that's enough guessing. We've gotten close enough. I want to keep it a mystery until the end. I'll tell you guys off air, but
We've built up the anticipation.
it's gonna be a big show. We're
Is
gonna
it the big
release
show?
it on the No, it's not. That would be good though.
Yeah, it would be.
But it's not the big show. But it is going to be a really big show.
1, 2, 3, kid.
And
Johnny Carson?
we're gonna release it on the 4th of July, just because.
Luger
Not really. That doesn't have anything to do with the person, but just why not 4th of July?
Damn you. And your half hints that aren't really hints. I guess
I'm
we're
not
gonna
giving
find out in
hints.
2
I'm just
minutes
promoting
anyway,
the
so it
show.
doesn't
So
really
for
matter.
fans, 100th episode of Primo Nutmeg, we're gonna release that on the 4th of July. So we have to stop pretty soon. But is there anything? I actually want to talk about mythology when you went into that a little bit because I think that we
love
could have
me
a
some
really good
mythology.
discussion.
Greek mythology.
Well, just mythology overall, because I think that a lot of people nowadays would think that mythology doesn't have a lot to do with anything, really. Like I actually get mad. Maybe some people do, because I get mad when people post horoscopes and like saying that has anything to do with their lives. I think that they might be in the minority. Most people would not be so superstitious. But what is your guys' take on mythology overall? Do you think that it ever served a practical purpose? Is it really just kind of trying to explain things for people where you don't go crazy because there's a big ball of fire in the sky and you can't explain why? Or do you think that there's more to that? Do you think that there are actually people who may have possessed godlike technology in the past? Like you hear about that, I think it's like a battery in Iraq and like a weird computer they found in the Mediterranean and shit like that. Like, what's just your overall take on these weird old myths from thousands of years ago?
Well, I think that they have a lot of relevant information. Before the written word was invented, because it is a technology, it had to be created and devised by people. All the tales were oral. So in order to remember some tales, like the Finnish national epic, the Kalevala, is like 30,000 lines or something like that. You got to think about the Iliad or the Odyssey. Like, try remembering that in your mind, to make it a tale, to add some mnemonic element to it is what makes it easy for the bards to recall it. If you think about any of those speed memorization contests they have, most of the people, you have 2 minutes to like look through a pack of cards without shuffling them and memorize what order they were in. And they usually tell themselves a story. They like assign a character to each card, and then can like tell themselves a tale using that, and that helps them remember it. So I think just because the information is put in that mold in order to make it easy to remember and to be entertaining enough for people to like pay attention to it enough to remember to carry on, that they have to put it in those kind of myths to make it more relevant and less like esoteric or obscure.
Would you agree with that, Chris?
To a certain extent, I think it's something which undergoes transformations through time, and I think it's also a function partially of people living together and people just being involved in intentional activities over time. For instance, I think that the United States has a mythic culture which is different than the mythic culture of Latin America, and which is different than a material culture, which arises out of the exigencies of, having to deal with the geography that you're living in and what it takes to.
You're saying that materialism can be mythical?
No, I'm saying that they're different.
Okay.
For instance, an example of material culture is the difference I was talking about earlier between a New England town and a southern town, where one is living in a space which is less open and less arable, and therefore it depends much less on like open spaced kinds of communities and that kind of communication. It's more clustered and has a tendency toward self-sufficiency rather than this kind of this large interspatial commerce.
So you're saying that different cultures have myths to kind of hold together the community behind this certain ideology or spirit or just way of treating each other?
Well, it's kind of weird. I think it arises, like if I told you, how to put this, it sort of has to do with the connection between memory and death. So if I told you that you were going to forget everything that happened tonight after tomorrow morning, and
that's why I'm recording it.
well,
Touche.
if you were just going to completely forget it and you were going to carry on your life as though it had never happened, this, in a sense, is a psychological form of death, right? Because what's the difference if you're just going to forget everything and just you'll be moving on, but you're just going to not know anything, right?
I guess.
So
Like in
who?
afterlife
Then the
terms.
question becomes who. What is memory and who is the rememberer? And when the memory becomes something across multiple people through multiple generations, it becomes a thing in its own right, which is different than what gave it origin.
Right.
So
Kings become gods, or Numens or forces in nature become personified just out of the act of communicating it and telling the story over and over again.
So myth has a sort of phantasmal presence, if you would. It is like a sort of like a ghost. Where was I going with that? So, for instance, the people of a good example of mythic culture in the United States is our origin story, which is generally thought to be that we.
In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Well,
we even have it in fucking verse.
I was thinking more around the time of the Revolutionary War, where we have this idea that we, a group of strong-willed Minutemen overpowered the crown of a great empire. So
Yeah, we teabagged him.
we have this running. So that's that memory influences our sense of what we kind of think our place in the universe is in a different way than in Latin America, which is more like a man, the noble cheater who kind of overcomes impossible odds. I think more of like Bolivar making invasion after invasion after invasion, traversing mountains and stuff like that, and still coming out victorious. And those things, although to us they have an obvious historical basis, also have a mythological residue which runs through our culture and our collective images of what it's, because like we have like the Tom Sawyers and they have
Daniel Boone.
yeah. So that kind of thing still exists. I think it's just like a function of memory. I'm not sure I could really pinpoint like what it does just kind of on the spot, but
It gives people aspiration and hope, whether or not Hercules did slay that lion, it's something to kind of live up towards. And that's like essentially in my mind what tales of mythology are for.
well, there is one there is one school of thought that where a myth or religion is not something which is merely superstitious or starts as superstition, but comes after what you might call scientific investigation and has a practical purpose. For instance,
Like the constellations, right?
Well, and
I was thinking of the megalithic monuments.
and it seems to get less understood and more ascribed to the realm of magic as you get more towards recent time. And that's sort of a trope that runs through a lot of like Greek and Roman poems and poets, is that there was a golden age or a better time in the past, and that we've been degrading since. So, their job as the cultural bearers of their cultures was to try to recall the past in order to better the present. So it is important, and like it sounds like that's sort of archaic or whatever, but talking about the sort of secular myths of our time, they trace themselves back. I mean, you want to talk about a national myth? How about Washington couched in repose with a toga on, like Zeus or fucking Jupiter, and that statue that they no longer in the display in the public? How about I actually got a bunch of old coins for my birthday from my mom, and like every country, European and American country, coins from the 20s and 30s all have a god on them. Our dimes in the 20s and 30s had Mercury.
Yeah.
The English pound had a sign of Mercury on it. It said commerce and exchange because he was the god of commerce.
Liberty was
Liberty.
On there, so.
It's basically just Juno wearing the Phrygian cap and everything, couched in repose on her fucking throne.
Well, American architecture kind of reflects upon that too. Back
yeah,
in the
go to
early
any
settlement
bank.
ages,
There's fucking columns and perfect Pythagorean ratios. Everything is this golden ratio.
Oh, the golden ratio fits in, amongst all of that.
Where do we consider ourselves as Westerners, as Anglo-Saxon, as European Americans?
It was Western development times, really, is when
Where's
that
the
started.
genesis of that? You ask anybody, it's like, oh, ancient Greece. That's not true. I mean, that's the tale we tell ourselves in order to find our place.
Well, guys, I'm sorry to cut this short. I would like to talk about it more in the future, but I do have to record this 100th episode of Primo Nutmeg. So, any final thoughts from anybody about anything?
Yeah, Hercules also had 12 labors, which represent the houses of the zodiac or the signs of the zodiac. Just like the sun.
Paul, do you have any final thoughts? Any, I don't know, summertime thoughts you want to share with folks?
Nope.
Okay. Chris, when are you going to be here again?
I'm not sure. I'm going to be here till Sunday. But,
Okay. Let's hang out on Saturday if you're free.
so if people want to meet and greet, autographs, I can make myself available.
Chrispy will be at the Farmers Club in Colchester.
The abandoned AJs with Seth. I still have the key.
All right, folks, thanks for listening to this 99th edition of Primo Nutmeg and everything else. Please do subscribe on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. And please check out our 100th episode being released on July 4th. Until next time.